Thank you. I'd like to call this meeting for the Board of Police Commissioners, February 6, 2023, to order. Some of you may have noticed that we will be live streaming tonight's meeting. The video will be uploaded to HRM's YouTube account and will be accessible to the public. The stream will be a live static shot. PowerPoints used may be hard to see, but will be posted to halifax.ca tomorrow on the Board of Police Commissioners agenda page. The Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognize that we are all treaty people. Now move to community announcements. Are there any community announcements from commissioners? Seeing none, move to the approval of the minutes. So calling for the approval of January 11th, 2023, January 16th, 2023, and January 23rd, 2023 minutes. I'll need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Commissioner Blackburn, seconded by Commissioner Giles. Are there any errors or omissions? A call for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, nay. Motion is carried. We'll just give Commissioner Smith, he's just arrived. I'll give him a moment to get himself in place. We are at the approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. What I'd like to suggest while he's sitting, but we'll give him a chance to chime in if he needs to, is that we move the in-camera item up to the beginning. We have Melanie and Laura here again this evening. They've come quite a few times. So I'm going to suggest that we put that at the top of the schedule. If we'll need a motion for that, if the board is interested in that consideration.
That we place the camera items to the top of the agenda.
Thank you. Seconded by Commissioner Akindoju. Thank you. Are there any further additions or deletions?
Sorry. I was just
Go
going
ahead,
to
Clerk.
say that the clerk's office has no additions or deletions, but I believe Commissioner Critchley does.
Yes, Commissioner Critchley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Kent. I just have an added item. I'm hoping the commission will consider it. It should be relatively brief. I believe it was circulated. It's just appointing members to the board's newly created subcommittee around policy. It's just based on the people who reached out expressing an interest. So apologies for not meeting the deadline for the notice of motion, but with the board's indulgence, if we can hopefully speak to that issue very quickly.
Okay, we need 2/3 majority. Before we go to vote on that, if I don't have any other interest, I just want to point out that in general, the normal process is a notice of motion in advance of that at the meeting before of a new motion that is not emergent or doesn't have a very specific timely consideration that needs to be brought forward. I think that this board has probably got a little out of practice on that, but all part of trying to keep within our process that we had set in place and meetings, the timeframes of which we have consistently been going over our timely meetings. I just want to remind commissioners of that. So in this case, perhaps Commissioner Critchley can speak to the importance of it specifically being done tonight for consideration. And the other part of this that I had some reservation on is that I know in an email that we received today from you, Commissioner Critchley, to get this in time, it was suggested that you had 2 people reach out to you, but I certainly was not aware of it. I would have thought that it's a committee of count of this board that kind of consideration should have perhaps come through here so that I would be able then disseminate it again out to the full commissioners for consideration. So it's just around process.
So I mean, Chair Kent, I'm happy. I'll defer to you. You're the chair.
Yeah.
It's my normal practice. Maybe Marty can correct, but I've probably brought more notices of motion than anyone on this board in the last year, for good or for ill. And so it is my normal practice to bring notices of motion within the timeline. I have already apologized for not having done so. I did not expect to be in court that day as long as I was. I had expected to meet the deadline. I conveyed that in my email. In this circumstance, I'm happy if we want to defer it, that's totally fine. I know that The policy committee, was stood up some time ago. It does need members. We heard very recently from the public, lots of interest, and I know that this was echoed at council to have a look at the extra duty policy. I know that's something that as a board, we've talked about the committee looking at. So I think that process should get started kind of sooner rather than later. And I mean, in light of all those reasons, I'd hope that the board would consider it tonight. Again, I have apologized for not missing the timeline. If the board considers it needs more time, I'll defer the motion at that time. And then if there's anyone else who is interested in being on the committee, I can either give up my seat or we can discuss that at that time. And I'm open to any friendly amendment. I'll say that categorically now. So I hope I've allayed your concerns. If not, then please let me know and I'll defer the motion.
Okay, so it's, what's that? It's not a deferral, it's a move,
Okay.
it's an added item.
Sure.
right? Yeah, it's either added item or notice of motion.
Okay.
So Commissioner Akindoju?
Thank you very much, Chair. I would support that. That should be set aside until a time that a notice of such has been sent out to all members, telling us that this is going to take place. For example, you should have asked, there was no email saying if you wanted to put your name down for nomination or not. So that was done without our knowledge. And I think that should be done with everybody's knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith?
Thank you, Chair. I just really quickly, I think it's important for us to remember also that items are always in order. And if a member wants to bring it forward, it just needs majority. In the other aspect as well is I remember, and maybe it's not an email, I can try to dig around, but when the motion came forward at the board, when we had discussion around the policy, I believe, Commissioner Critchley, you asked for folks to put their name forward and reach out to you if you want to be involved, and that's what I did. So I don't know if, I don't remember an email, but I do know that when we had the discussion at the board, you asked folks to reach out to you, and that's how I knew about doing it.
Okay, so for the purpose of today, Commissioner Critchley has put forward an ask for an added item with 2/3 consent. We can add it. Again, from my perspective, I made a commitment to try to tighten up our processes to be able to consistently deliberate within the timeframes that we have set for our meetings. And I do believe as well that we've gotten away from those types of notice of motion. So it's now at the will of the commission as to whether or not they would like to proceed. Any other further questions on it? Okay, call for the question, and we need 2/3. All those in favor say aye. Those against, nay. So what's 2/3? I'm just not going to do the math on this one.
2/3 of a 7-person body is 5.
So that means it will be not added today. Can we consider this, rearrange it to be a notice of motion later?
If you do the math of 2/3 of 7, it is 4.67, and you round up.
Okay. So again, the question is for the purpose of Commissioner Critchley's consideration in a future meeting, can he turn that one into a notice of motion later? Is that in order?
Yes, Chair Kent, that would be
Yes.
in order.
Okay, thank you. Any further additions or deletions from the agenda? Or the agenda, I should say. Hearing none. So we've moved in camera to the beginning of the meeting. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion's carried. So there are any business arising out of the minutes?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any calls for declaration of conflict of interest? Hearing none. There is no consideration of deferred business. Correspondence, petitions, and deletions. Do we have any?
Chair Kent, there was no correspondence received from the clerk's office.
Okay, thank you very much. Any petitions anyone has to bring forward?
No petitions were received at the clerk's office.
Okay. And no presentations today. So now we'll move to in camera. We'll need a motion to go to in camera for item 13.1. Second by Councillor Akadoju. Okay, so we'll now take a minute and thank you. Mr.
Sorry,
Chair.
Commissioner Kent, just on item 13.1 with the minutes, it is the custom of the board that the chair typically asks if that can be approved in public, just for the minutes specifically.
The minute specifically? Okay, thank you.
Sorry, this is the first time we have done this with a new chair, so I wanted to remind that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So would anyone like to move the motion for acceptance of the minutes for January 11th, 2023 or January 16th, 2023? And so moved by Commissioner Blackburn. The seconder, Commissioner Thomas. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, nay. So the motion is carried for the minutes. Now we'll go into, it was 13.2. Personnel matter. And we already have a motion to go to in camera, so we're good. Okay, we'll be back momentarily. We hope. Yes. Thank you. Okay, we will now resume our regular board meeting. We are at item number 10.2. So we'll deal with 10.2.1, a revision.
Madam Chair, excuse me, should we do the ratification motions first, please?
Yes. So we need a motion then. Andrea. Commissioners, missing some commissioners too. Commissioner Blackburn,
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move that the Board of Police Commissioners adopt the direction provided in camera and private at the
Oh,
February 6, 2023 Board of Police Commissioners meeting. I so move.
And is this for item 13.2? It was the first in camera item.
Yes.
13.2, correct, yes.
Thank you.
we have a seconder, Commissioner Smith. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion's carried. And for 13.3. Need another motion. Commissioner Blackburn,
I move that the Board of Police Commissioners adopt the direction provided in camera and private at the February 6, 2023 Board of Police Commissioners meeting. I so move.
moved and seconded by Commissioner Smith. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion's carried. So now we'll revert back to the regular agenda, of which I had missed the chief's reports, the chief updates. So we can start with those. Do you have a choice of who wants to go first? Commissioner Christie, why don't you go first? Just going to try to balance it out, go back and forth as much as I can remember. Might need your, yeah, you're right. Might need your reminder who went first. It's quite a mic. I think you should stand up and sing a song first.
Seriously?
Oh, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. There.
Morning, Chair, through you to guests online and to the board and distinguished members of HRM. My brief today is relatively short, given the number of times that we've met here over the last 6 to 8 weeks. So pleased to report that the district efforts towards what we call a POWPOM is well underway. Provisionally, we're meeting for a day and a half at the end of March, and that will have a number of learning topics, from wellness to sort of tactical responses to some of the latest information that we have in different subject matter experts attending. We'll be pleased to also host a dining in dinner. So we'll speak further with you or the board. There may be some limited interest for some dignitaries to attend. And so we'll see what the appetite of that is. Noted, Chair. Noted. The second part, for the knowledge of the board, I've written a letter to the chair as well as to the CAO. It's the intention of Halifax District to get out and do some community town hall of a limited nature, to get out and continue the consultation. Certainly in the last 7 to 8 weeks, it's 8 weeks today that I landed in Halifax. So by and large, have most of the first circle of influence. Most of you I've been blessed to have some time with, and now beginning to put that circle out farther. So the purpose of that is also to determine some of the policing priorities for the next several years. You've heard in the business case some discussion about Vision 2025, but really trying to ask yourselves, what's the footprint? And in a complementary way to the work underway for the PricewaterhouseCoopers report and other initiatives that are out there, what are the ideas and the visions and the feedback that we have to provide the most nimble police service that we can? That will also inform our next year's multi-year financial plan process and try and wrap it up in terms of where we're going. So looking forward to that, Chair. In terms of operations, just a couple things on a proactive note. Two of the members did coffee with a cop. They're often called meetings where they go to Tim Hortons and they just let folks know that they can come and meet. So there was a member from North Preston that did that, and also a member from Upper Tantallon. So that was a very positive initiative. And at the same time, some of you may have heard the phrase CART, Community Action Response Reaction Team. So that acronym has been bantered around a fair amount. But we have probably about 6 to 8 proactive positions that are a mix of community policing victim services, and then the additional officers, boots on the street positions. They're called SSRO positions. But we're having some discussions that have been on the go prior to my arrival for the last 8 months with how do we leverage that team to have the most impact, still consistent with their core mandate. But as an example, that team ran some extra patrols over the weekend during the cold snap, and we were able to, in RCMP core jurisdictional areas, accompany the GSAR folks that were visiting homeless folks and so on and so forth. We put a little bit of a strong effort in over the weekend, and that team is a good example of being able to mobilize to meet emergent community priorities. So we're also trying to develop some metrics around that team and what are the things that that team will take on in terms of sort of core, I would say, slightly tweaked mandate. In terms of operations, just a couple high-level events that I'll share with the board. On January 28th, Cole Harbour RCMP members responded to a stabbing. The suspect was already gone, but the victim had received life-threatening injuries due to numerous stab wounds. Our members were able to use their trauma kits. Sometimes you'll see them T for tourniquet or others that the members carry now. We're able to seal the chest temporarily, add a tourniquet, and hemostatic dressings prior to the arrival of emergency health services. It's very likely that those members saved that victim's life. That was very noteworthy. Since then, CID has made the arrest of the 2 individuals and investigations continuing. I think I'll leave it at that, given the number of times we've met in the last few weeks, Chair, but if there's any questions from yourself or the board, I'd be pleased to answer.
Thank you. And thank you, Chief Superintendent Christie. Somehow you read my mind because I was going to ask you about CART. It's not something that I know a lot about. I saw a news release where CART was referenced in relation to some YCGA offenses from, I think, October maybe, where CART had been involved. It's not something I feel like I really know a lot about, although it sounds like from that news release, at least, and combined with what you've mentioned today, that the team has a broad mandate. I see it described in the news release as a team dedicated to addressing social issues and crime prevention by working with partners and community resources. So I wondered if you could just tell me in a little more detail. So you said that there's officers. Am I right in understanding within the RCMP, within Halifax District, there's 1 victim services staff member? Is that correct? Because we've received a presentation from that person in the past. Or are there additional victim services staff members within Halifax District?
Yeah, so it's my understanding, Commissioner, that there is more than 1, but I could be wrong on that. But I think there's 2, isn't there?
There's 2.
Inspector Flynn. So the victim services have not traditionally been associated with the CART team. So again, that's a different resource tucked into different offices. But if you imagine the core mandate of an older phrase, community policing victim services, that was the older name for positions that were often authorized in the 70s and the 80s. They were about outreach, school talks, working with elders, seniors, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a little bit of a rebranding exercise and reimagining exercise as we look at the identity of those positions. And the cold snap is an example of that. If there are homeless folks, it may be that the watch that works 2 days, 2 nights on, it may be a real functional ability to take somebody that's in need and drive them to the CART team. The other part with that, Commissioner, and we'll see where it goes, is there's a concept called a hub model. Hub model is where folks in need, often youth or seniors, used to be in effect here in Halifax District many years ago. So it's possible, one of the pieces on the drawing board is, can that team conceptually host a hub model? But there's a new NCOIC that's been nominated for that or promoted into that position. So we have some more work ahead of us.
Okay, so would you mind just telling me who else is, so the CART is a team, who makes up so it's a number of officers who also play roles in the regular watch, or are they dedicated officers within the CART?
Yes, so if you remember the business cases around the positions that traditionally HRM are funded for, and then different police agencies sometimes have additional bodies that the province has funded. So this team, I'd have to run the exact numbers, but at least 4 to 6 of those street crime units and new bodies are on this. So the HRM doesn't necessarily pay for it, but it's part of the RCMP service delivery in HRM. And the question that managers do all the time, which is how do we make the most of the resources that we have? So this is sort of an evolutionary process, and I'd be pleased at some time, perhaps in 6-8 weeks, to be able to talk more about what we landed on in terms of that team's mandate.
I mean, that sounds great. And, you know, and hopefully the board can play a role. Obviously, we're an advisory board vis-a-vis the RCMP, but if we can identify potential priorities for CARD, obviously it seems highly relevant in light of kind of what we've been hearing lately, if it has this broad mandate. And particularly if there's, you know, I think hub model is really good, you know, who are the relevant non-police service providers that, you know, maybe the CARD is either working with or alongside. You know, obviously there's been big changes with C5 to CDSA referral powers and things like that, right? So who are officers referring when they're finding people in possession of drugs, where they're referring to other service providers for the purpose of providing treatment and things like that? You know, if they're dealing with individuals who are on the street, are they referring to appropriate service providers? So ensuring that network's in place, it'd be great to get that information maybe at a later date.
Yeah, no, Commissioner, thank you. I think we're thinking much the same. And for the board, what the idea is the phrase hub model something that you've heard before to the folks? So again, if a client is a frequent, mathematically or empirically, somebody that's in frequent contact with the police, or they're particularly high risk, then that group of stakeholders may be able to convene once every 6 or 8 weeks, and then probations and perhaps somebody from family services, et cetera, might be able to look at a certain case. There's some privacy issues around that, but then come up with a plan of action. So there's some potential there, Commissioner Critchley. It's early days yet as we sort of imagine and sort of continue to sort of pin that down.
Sure.
But open for certainly input, and it's a positive evolution.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, I'd like to offer a couple. I just want to acknowledge the importance, I think, of the kinds of meetings you're going to have with the community. I think that especially given the kinds of changes and the intensity of the public contribution during budget, we really need to have these conversations well before then to get the sense from the community at large. So it's not just an emergent time, right? So I think that can be helpful, certainly to your priority setting as well. Within the municipality, we have a couple of districts, at least one. I happen to know the councillor. She might be sitting right here where I am, who has both HRP and RCMP. And I think that, and Chief, maybe you can speak to that when it's your turn, but in a situation like that, it might be helpful to have both of you doing that town hall meeting together, and then it's one meeting with the entire district, because it allows you to see some crossover activity along those borders, as well as both of you there could answer those kinds of questions. And I'm not sure if Councillor Russell has the same, but I think anyway, something to consider. But most importantly, I just want to commend you for the intent to go out, and anything that we can do to help support that too, because that we'll look forward to hearing what you're hearing here, I think, because it can influence as well the work that we're doing. Because that's, we have said it, Commissioner Critchley has been a big advocate for it. We identified community engagement in our strategic priorities last year. No doubt what's going to come up again this year. And we could help with some focused attention on it. So thank you.
No, thank you, Chair. And certainly as we refine our ideas, I'll be in touch with Chief Kinsella.
Yeah. Hearing no further. Oh, Commissioner Critchley, your third time. I'm going to give you a third one.
Second time?
Third on this one.
I don't know. Well, I think I had my 5 minutes, and I'm getting my 3 minutes.
You know what? I'm going to give you 2.
I don't know about that.
I
might
think
take my
you
full
asked
3.
questions. He answered, then you answered back, and now it's your turn.
All within my 5
I'm
minutes.
going with it. Just take it.
Well, I just wanted, maybe I'll retract what I was going to say, but I was going to echo your comments. I agree with you.
Go for it.
Oh, so now I can have What do you think?
You can have whatever you need
Can I
now.
have 5 minutes now, maybe, if I'm agreeing, or, okay?
Oh, my heavens, okay.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, I think that it's in keeping with our role as well to be a conduit for the community, both in our capacities and RCMP advisory boards. And I mean, that's something Chair Kent, you would talk to me about, wanting to look at having commissioners do similar sorts of things. So I mean, if that's something that can be looked at, having, obviously the board has to be seen as distinct from the RCMP to the extent that we are an oversight and advisory body. But if work is already ongoing to engage with community, then perhaps that's something that board members can sign up and do and engage with, and then come back to this board to report on.
Yeah.
So
Thank you. Actually, I think that's a great consideration for the board, and we'll look at it later. It would be a public meeting, but so you could attend regardless, but perhaps we could have a rotational space where we are attending these. I think we would really benefit from it. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. You may know Ravine Glasgow of the Community Mobilization Team. She may be attending well, right? So
Yeah.
certainly lots of
Yeah.
space for folks to attend.
Yeah.
As we finalize the dates and locations, it's designed to be a little bit impromptu and informal as well, but it'll be a little bit of a presentation part, and we'll track the issues that we hear. So if that's of interest to the board, by all means, as we finalize that, we'll make sure that comes out for consideration.
Great. Super. Thank you. Chief Kinsella, your turn.
Thanks.
Doesn't sound like it.
Oh, there it goes. Okay, I think I'm on now. Thanks, Chair, and good evening, everyone. Chair Kemp, members of the board, those that are joining in person, and those that might be on virtually. I'm just going to start by providing a quick update on our award ceremony that we held earlier in January. And it was great to have everybody there post-pandemic, get everybody together. For those members of the board that could attend, thank you very much for doing that. It's much appreciated. In total, we gave out 97 awards for Queen's Jubilee Medals, Police Exemplary Service Medals, and of course, some Chiefs Recognitions Awards. And, one of the highlights in an evening like that is having our members, family members, there to support them. And it was great to see another number of them showed up with loved ones, and was one of the highlights of the event for me. So I just wanted to pass along that, and it was great to see so many out at that time. We have our ongoing recruitment campaigns that are going on. We're really focused in currently on our experienced police officers, and we expect to hire another cohort at the end of March of experienced police officers. We're just working on the details and numbers, but more to come on that. Just in regards to some really good police work that's done over the last month or so. On January 12th, officers stopped a vehicle that was driving erratically on Highway 111 near Main Street in Dartmouth. The driver was arrested, and officers were able to seize 3,000 non-prescription pills from the vehicle. Excellent work by all those involved, and took a large amount of hazardous substances off our street. The other one I want to talk about was really it started out with the HRP, was a joint effort between HRP and RCMP in the end, and led to a very important arrest where a man had approached a woman who was at a bank machine, assaulted her, and took her property. That was on Portland Street in Dartmouth. GIS was initially involved, the integrated GIS unit, and very quickly they were able to identify an individual that was responsible. Very, very serious assault that occurred on the individual in the kiosk. Through the excellent work of our quick response unit, RCMP patrol members, the individual was stopped, arrested, and brought into custody, and he's facing a number of charges, including attempted murder. As always, and based on the events of the weekend, not only the cold weather, but we did have another suspicious death that we continue to investigate. And within our jurisdiction so far, there has been 2 homicides and 2 shooting incidents. So we continue to work on that, and we remain very focused. And one, I think, really important stat, and something that we really have to stay focused on, and we will, is the issue of taking illegal firearms off the streets. Year to date, starting in January, we've taken 55 firearms off the street already. And you may know at council, I did report that the number last year was 396 in 2022. So lots of good work being done in that regard, and lots more work to do in that regard as well. For just to quickly on our traffic update, last month we issued just over 1,000 summary offense tickets. The bulk of those were for driving without insurance, failing display plates, and distracted driving. And as we all know, this month is African Heritage Month, a time when we honor the many contributions of the African Nova Scotian community. This year, the provincial theme is Seas of Struggle, African Peoples from Shore to Shore. So celebrating this month is an important way for us to remind ourselves and commit to action against anti-Black racism, and then backing up this commitment with ongoing and meaningful action will help us all make progress. I also want to quickly mention that the Atlantic Women in Law Enforcement 2023 Annual Conference is coming to Halifax in the fall. It will be later, either in September or October. We're really looking forward to that. And it's really an honor for us to be able to partner with AWLE as the acronym. Many of our members support the important work of AWLE as a resource and network for women in policing. And it's an exciting opportunity for our organization, and we look forward to helping host a successful conference. The last two things I want to talk about are a couple good news stories. You know, these come in on a regular basis. I sometimes bring them, I sometimes don't, but based on the weekend we've had and with the cold snap and everything that was going on across the HRM, I just wanted to add these two. They're redacted a little bit just to protect the individuals that are involved. But I read this morning when I came in, and it was quite a nice thing to read. Good morning, Chief. I wanted to pass along my heartfelt thanks for the amazing job your staff did last night responding to a mental health crisis. I was on a bus traveling with other passengers, and we were returning to the Halifax area when one of the passengers suffered a mental health crisis. We attempted to call a crisis hotline, but unfortunately were unable to get through. Based on the type of situation that was unfolding, we called the 911 to let them know what was happening. And I'm just going to go to the exact words here for that piece. The staff on the call were excellent and dispatched police to assist us while we rode the bus. The police arrived and handled the situation with extreme tact and empathy for both the individual, others on the bus, and everyone who was affected. They provided excellent information and ensured all were aware of the process that would follow, and even offered up contact information in case it was needed post-event. I wanted to pass along a huge thank you for a sensitive call handled extremely well. I think it speaks to the complexity, and we've had a lot of talk about how we respond to those in mental health crisis. This is just one of the notes that I received today. And if you'll indulge me, I'll just share the second one very quickly. So the other one was from an individual who says, wanted to pass on a piece of feedback over the weekend about two patrol officers. They were out in Dartmouth in the downtown area and dealing with a individual who was homeless in the freezing cold. It was very clear the individual was in need of assistance, but might be resistant to that assistance. This comes from an individual who was sitting inside of a restaurant watching this unfold out on the street. The two officers spent more than 30 minutes talking and getting them to try to go inside and warm up. And, you know, it's kind of nice to hear. And what they said was, wanted to make sure you knew that those officers stepped up and those working in the store noticed. So I think it's impactful. Talks about the great work the frontline are doing on a regular basis, oftentimes going unnoticed. Thank you for allowing me to share that with you. And that's the end of my update. Thank you.
Thank you. CAO would like to ask a question, comment?
Yes, thank you for the update, and thank you also for talking about the Women in Law Enforcement Conference. I think that's excellent. That's coming to our municipality to be hosted. And I know you'd mentioned there may be an opportunity for Chair Kent or myself to get involved and support in some way. It occurs to me we're a little unusual compared to some of the other locales where it may be hosted because we've got an integrated service. So my question is that actually, you know, a topic that other organizations are interested in hearing about, or are the RCMP and HRPP working together on this conference?
Yeah, good question, CAO, and thank you. And through the chair to the commission. So I have had conversation with Chief Superintendent Sue Black on this very fact. We have to reconvene to see what it looks like as we go forward. But I can tell you that she was open, as am I. That's was the reach out was all about, to see how we can partner for this and what that will look like and what roles will be played out.
Thank you. Are there any other? Yeah, Commissioner Giles.
Chief, thank you for sharing with us the 2 accolades that you received. Those are good news stories. And I think I'm not like anybody else when I say that in my long life to date, I have had some unfortunate experiences with police officers, not just in this locale, but in other parts of the country and in fact, other parts of the world. But the positive experiences I have dramatically outweighed all of the negative experiences. And I think it's important for us to share at meetings like this, the type of communications that you have been receiving. But it's also important, at least it's important to me, to recognize that there are police officers, men and women of considerable diversity who are providing perhaps less noteworthy or less recognized services to the citizenry day by day by day by day. And I can tell you, I was pretty surprised yesterday morning when at the corner of Falkland and Gottingen at just after 6 o'clock, I had a chance to chit chat with 2 officers who had been walking the beat, as it were, and it was still kind of like minus 15, minus 16. And neither of them spoke English as a first language. And I had a great chit chat with them, talked about what they were doing, what they were going to be doing, how they were doing it, how they were getting along. And there's a lot of good work which is being done by rank and file police officers in this municipality, not just by the HRP, but by the Halifax detachment of the RCMP. And I know it's important for writers like Don Walker to get their points across. And in many respects, what they write about is accurate from their perspectives. But oftentimes those broad brush articles, which use a lot of information from a lot of different sources, are not fairly used as proxy for what is going on our streets. And I think there are people sitting around this table, I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one, who recognizes that there is substantial good work being done, not just in a law enforcement context, but in a compassionate and humanitarian context on, as I say, a day-by-day basis. And I want to thank, through you, Chief, and through you, Chief Superintendent, your men and your women who do that daily.
Thank you, Commissioner Giles. Well said. Anyone else? No, thank you both for those updates. Before we go on to the next item, I do want to take a moment because I was remiss in acknowledging the presence of Bill Moore. Bill is leading the policing review, which will influence the many things policing related, not only for our board, but the public safety strategy, the reports on change, the potential change in the future. So thank you for coming tonight, Bill, and we appreciate it. Just want to acknowledge that. And thank you for the work you're doing. So we'll now move on to 10.2.1, revision to approve 2023 working meeting schedule. Sorry. So we'll be looking for a motion, and it's related to a documented record that we're now utilizing this space. So if someone would like to put a motion on the floor, we can debate it. If there is debate. Commissioner Critchley?
That the Board of Police Commissioners approve the change of the in-person meeting location for the board's approved meeting schedule from Halifax Hall, second floor, City Hall, 1841 Argyle Street, Halifax, to the Harbor East Marine Drive Community Council, meeting space, main floor, Alderney Landing, 60 Alderney Drive, Dartmouth.
Seconder? Commissioner Blackburn seconds. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this? Commissioner Critchley.
I'll just say I'm very happy that we moved to this space. I think it's excellent that we're able to live stream the meetings. I know through no fault of anyone that it was very difficult to do that in Halifax City Hall. Big efforts were made to try and make that happen. But I think it's really, really kind of a baseline requirement that the public be able to access the meetings in a meaningful way. And as you can see, most people cannot make it to a public meeting in person on 4:30 on a Monday. So I think the fact that there's a record of the meetings, that they're available online for public consumption afterward is a really important move. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Seeing no other further speakers, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion's carried. Item 10.3.1, that would be Commissioner Kent's registration for Canadian Policing Wellness Check National Conference. So this, I'll speak to that. I can't put the motion on the floor. Commissioner Blackburn.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'll move this for you. I move that the Board of Police Commissioners approve Commissioner Kent's registration at the Canadian Police Wellness Check Conference to be held in person in Ottawa from March 6th to 8th, 2023. Commissioner Kent will attend the conference as the Chair of the Halifax Board of Police Commissioners. I so move.
Seconder? Commissioner Akindoju. Anyone who'd like to speak to that? I'll just briefly tell you that this is this will be the final one for this fiscal year. It's one that I don't think we've had representation at before, and this one in particular is all around the wellness of the force, the wellness of the members that are serving every day, as Commissioner Giles certainly spoke well to. So I think it's an important one more than ever that we be represented, and I'm happy to go and attend that. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on that? Seeing none, we call for the question. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion is carried. Any commission? I don't think there are any commissioner updates. Added items, no. Items for future consideration. I don't think we have any of those. We've done our in-camera. Notices of motion.
I will bring a notice of motion that I'll be moving to appoint commissioners to the committee. There's been asked that an email go out in that regard, so I will do that.
I'll do that.
Sure. And then anyone who'd like to be on the committee can let me know. Or let. Oh. I will bring a notice of motion that at the next meeting, I'll be moving to appoint members of the policy subcommittee. Members to be determined.
Thank you. So that concludes our agenda. We'll have the date for the next meeting is March 6th. There is some consideration being reviewed at the agenda review level around that date because we're approaching, I'll be at conference. I think Dan will be at conference. If we just moved it to the 20th, we would bypass the traditional March break vacations and such. So we'd need to decide this evening, would we?
I
how do
can
we do that?
email
Okay.
members tomorrow about
that.
confirming that date and
Just a
time.
heads up that it may not be on March 6th. And would someone like to call for adjournment? Commissioner Giles. Thank you. Don't need a seconder on that one. Okay.